Hi everybody, it's Ayla. I tweet over at A Purposeful Wife. You can follow me on Twitter. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and give me a comment down below. If you'd like me to talk about any subject in particular that you're wondering about, let me know. Message me over on Twitter, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear back from you. All right, so I wanted to talk today about the refugee crisis slash migrant crisis slash Muslim invasion of Europe. It has a lot of names depending on who you talk to. I'm not going to talk about why there's refugees, and I don't want to talk about that aspect of it. And I'm not even going to talk about who the refugees are, the migrants are. There's a lot of great information out there. There's a lot of people who've done amazing videos, blog posts, tweets, lots of journalists who are going after the real story. You can get that information if you want to. It's out there. I wanted to talk a little bit about why Europe, and to a slightly lesser extent, but America, are welcoming the migrants with open arms, teddy bears, lollipops, cash, and hashtags, hashtag welcome, refugees welcome. Okay, why is that happening? Because if you think about it, it's an emotional perspective. It's not a very logical perspective to welcome the refugees. So let's break that down. I'm going to start out by saying I blame feminism. I blame feminism for the reaction to what's going on and for the perpetuation of what's going on, and why this mass migration into Europe has gotten so bad. And I'm going to explain why I blame feminism for that. So let's get down to what exactly is happening. Let's parse this out a bit. So you have a country, you have resources, you have people living in the country, you have borders, you have security, you have control. Why, logically, would anyone allow hundreds of thousands of refugees to come over into your country, to live off of your social welfare programs, to increase crime, to increase horrible crimes like rape, and to, honestly, quite frankly, take over your culture? Whether that is forcefully, like riots in the streets, or whether that's simply breeding your culture out. Why would a country allow that to happen? Logically, it wouldn't. If you're thinking about logic, you would not allow that, okay? That's not a position anyone would logically have. It doesn't benefit Germany at all to take in these refugees. Now, some people say, oh, but multiculturalism and diversity, it makes us strong, it's ours. But that's been proven bunk. That's complete and total bunk. You look at Sweden, they thought that, and they've become the garbage can of Europe. Their crime rates are through the roof. Their 1 in 4 Swedish women is going to be raped in her lifetime. Rape has gone up 1,400%. The statistics are out there. You can look at it where they've had mass influx of migrants slash refugees slash Islamic invaders slash. It's gone to heck. It's really gone to heck. Okay, so it's not a logical position. You can't justify it logically. So why then would German people be there at the train stations welcoming these refugees, holding signs that say welcome refugees, hey, can we get you a teddy bear, can we get you a lollipop, yes please, throw your garbage on my country, and reject aid packages because they have a cross on them and whatnot? Okay, why would they do that? It's emotional. It's purely emotional. It's completely an emotional argument. It's a completely emotional argument, and it's based on white guilt. It's based on this notion that white countries should be guilty for colonialism, and that we should feel guilty about the resources we have, and that therefore we should let in third world immigrants, migrants, refugees, etc. into our country because it isn't fair. It's unfair that we have all of these things, and we need to share. And that's the logic behind that. Of course, nobody says that India needs to share the prosperity they've been going through lately because of capitalism and American jobs. Nobody says China needs to share. Again, the prosperity they've been having because we're buying all their crap, and they have tons of jobs over there for people. Nobody's talking about Africa and the black parts of Africa being too black, so they need to, import Indians or Chinese or, Asians or Filipinos, white people, whatever. Nobody's saying that. They only say it about white countries, and it's because of white guilt. Okay, so this notion of white guilt, and let's get down to this. The notion of white guilt comes from a political and social structure we have in place today that is dominated by feminism. What we have now in our political and social structure are women who are feminists, even if they don't consider themselves feminists, they carry out feminist ideals. And men who, again, even if they don't consider themselves feminists, practice it openly in the political and social spectrum. These feminist ideals that we were started to get handed to us about 100 years ago. Now, 100 years ago, a group of women got together and said women needed the vote. Another group of women got together and said women should not vote, and there's a lot of reasons why. Now, I'm not saying women shouldn't have the vote. I don't think that we could even go back to that point in time, even if it were better. But I'm not necessarily saying it's better to not have women vote. But what I am saying is I don't think we can go back. I think it's one of those things that we can't go back. So it's not kind of worth arguing about in those terms. But what I am saying is that we waste our votes. In general, women waste our votes. Now, there's wonderful, brilliant conservative women out there who try to think logically and who engage in politics from a logical perspective and who are very smart. But in general, women, we're the ones voting for social welfare programs. We're the ones that have increased social welfare programs. And we're the ones that are voting to, open borders and let migrants in, whatever country we're talking about, Europe or America. We're the ones that vote our emotions because we're emotional creatures. Okay, so we had this idea 100 years ago that women should have the vote. Women have completely thrown away that vote on saying, everything needs to be fair, everything needs to be equal. And it's not just women, and it's not just the people they elect, because the men that they're electing, even if it's men or women, are of course, playing to their constituency. So the emotions bleed in that way. But then we have men in our society now. You're in your 30s and your 40s. Overwhelmingly, you were probably most likely raised by a single woman. If you weren't raised by a single woman, you were raised in a society that made single moms to be these saints of all things. You were raised in a feminist society that said that women are not only equal, but heavily implied that women are better. It's come out and said. I mean, you have the book, The Natural Superiority of Women, that was published. What was it? The 60s, early 70s. So you've had this mindset trickling into society. You have it full force. You have these men who have been educated in the public school system, and they've been educated around environmentalism, global warming, all of these emotional, non-logical, non-fact-based things. And then, of course, the social justice warriors and all the identity politics. It's all emotional. None of it is logical. So that is all feminized things coming into that men have been raised. So we have these feminized men, these men completely stripped of their masculinity, these emasculated men, and we have women. And they are dominating our culture right now. They're dominating our society, they're dominating our politics, both in America and Europe. Now, that's bad because you can't have too much of one thing. There's a natural balance. There's a natural balance between the masculine and the feminine. And when you have too much of one thing, when you have too much emotions and you have too much nurturing, it gets bad because guess what? The fact of the matter is you cannot nurture the world. You cannot take the millions and billions of people living in poverty in the world through, sometimes, quite oftentimes through no fault of their own, but at least through the fault of their ancestors, some extent to their ancestors who didn't build infrastructure. There was a huge variety. Yes, and of course there was colonialism, there was imperialism in some places that held other places back. But you don't have, in these societies, they did not build themselves up. They don't have what the West has. You can't give what the West has to all of them. All you're going to do is take the one countries that are up here that have toilets and running water and penicillin and vaccines, and you're just gonna you're not raising by accepting millions or billions of these immigrants. You're not into Western countries. You're not bringing them up here. You're bringing a couple of them up here for a minute. What you're doing is you're bringing them, a couple of them up here for a minute, and it's going to go like this. We've seen that happen. Okay, so I feel very emotional about this. I'm sure you can tell. I need to calm myself down. Take a deep breath. Okay. Where do I want to go with this? So what you have is a culture in Western society completely dominated by feminism and feminist ideas that are illogical. They want to nurture the world. They want to take care of the world. It can't happen. Now, feminine strengths, which are to love and to nurture, work wonderful within the family structure, and they work wonderful at those jobs that women are naturally really good at, like nursing and teaching and running, orphanages and aid Red Cross, relief societies, things like this. Women are great at that. We rock that. That's our world. We're great. But you can't make the whole world that. That's not how it works. Men in general and by nature build structures. They build structures, they industrialize, and they acquire resources. This is what they do. And the white Christian man has done it best. That's why we have what we have. Okay. When you take those strengths of men, their logic, their industrialness, their natural abilities to lead and protect and provide, and you try to make them nurturers, you get these, hipsters with man buns walking around talking about their feelings. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for society. We need manly men. We need manly men in society. We needed them in politics. So you have something happen where refugees, migrants, invaders, whatever you want to call them, want to come into Europe. You have this feminized political structure that says, oh, everybody come in and we'll give you lollipops and teddy bears. And that's why I blame feminism. That is essentially why I blame feminism for where we're at now. And I'll give you an example. Okay, there is this British TV show, and I can't remember what it was called. It was a couple years back. I watched it on Netflix. There was only one season, about 11 episodes. And it was kind of like Stephen King's The Stand. There was a plague. This plague had been released, and most of the human population had died. And a couple of people were immune. I don't know, one in every 10,000 or something. I don't know what the statistics would be, but there's these little pockets of people. And then the people that were immune were banding together and trying to figure out, how to go on with society. And so there had been this one family, and they were living in a cabin, and they were pretty isolated from the rest of the world. And as this plague was going down, they hadn't left their cabin. They hadn't gone to the grocery store or anything like that. They hadn't interacted with anybody, and they hadn't acquired the plague. And it was a father. The mother was dead. There was a father, and he was a single father of 2 children, a little boy and a teenage girl. And so the father recognized and realized, okay, we're probably not immune to this plague. We survived because we're isolated. And the only way we're going to continue to survive is if we continue to be isolated. So he kept the kids locked in the house all the time. And he noticed that birds would, peck at dead bodies and were spreading, were a way to carry the disease around. So he found that if he found dead birds on his property, or birds were on the property, he would go out in like a hazmat suit, get rid of the dead birds, or, clean up the mess or whatever. Then he would scrub down in like acids and things in this big barrel before he'd come back in. Well, the teenage girl didn't understand why they couldn't go outside. She didn't understand, exactly, like, why couldn't she go swinging on the swings and play? And she wanted to, see other people, and she felt confined and constricted. So one day when the dad was out, she snuck out, and she met up with 2 guys who were immune to the plague. And at first they assumed she was immune, because the only people they had come across at that point were immune. And so they were talking with her, and they shared some chocolate and things like that. And then they realized that she wasn't actually immune, that she had been just isolated from this plague. And they were like, oh, no, oh gosh, okay. They're like, well, like, we can't let you go home. And she freaked out. Well, why can't I go home? Oh my gosh, And so she thinks they're going to kidnap her or whatever. So she starts running for her house. So they're running behind her. And her dad's in the doorway. inside the house in the doorway, and the daughter's coming, and the men that are immune are like, hey, we shared chocolate with her, we interacted with her. Dad knows immediately, crap, you know, my daughter's been exposed. Boom, door slammed shut. It's a really emotional scene. I'm going to try really hard not to cry. The daughter's on the outside of the door, and she's crying and she's screaming for her dad. And she's saying, you know, please let me in, don't leave me out here. And the dad knows that he can't let her in because he'll die and the son will die. And we're watching that scene, and it hit me like I would let her in. And I think most women would. We're emotional, and we will martyr ourselves, and we won't always martyr our other children, but we will put ourselves and we will put our family even in harm's way and in risk, particularly for other members of our family, but also to do the nurturing thing, the loving thing, the kind thing. Men do the hard thing. Men are designed to shut that door. They have an instinct, it kicks in right away, and they shut the door. They're not playing around. And it breaks their hearts. I know it does. But they shut the door. Let me give you one more example. We were living in an apartment, small apartment building. I just had 4 apartments when my husband and I, fairly early on in our marriage. And we had, I believe we just had the one son at the time who was about 2. I think we only had 1 child at the time. And the guy that lived right across from us, it was kind of like just a floorplex, you know, so it was all outside. There weren't any internal hallways or anything. The guy that lived right across from us, his door was just a few feet in front of our doors, really good friend of ours. So we often just left the doors open and kind of like, you know, he had a kid and we had a kid that were similar ages, and they would just like run back and forth and play with each other's toys, and he was a single dad. And anyway, so we were hanging out one day kind of in that little space between our doors, as we often did, and we were talking or whatever, and this guy, this friend of ours, had gotten in a fight with a neighbor like the night before. And we lived out, it was in a 4-plex, but was out in the middle of the woods. It was kind of weird, but that's where we lived. And so we didn't have any really close immediate neighbors. It was, you know, a little bit farther away. So we weren't really thinking anything of it when he told us about this fight he got in. And this neighbor of ours he was a total meth head. And so we weren't thinking a lot about it. But our neighbor Brian was like, oh, I got in the fight with this guy. And we called him Crazy Guy because he was always on meth and stuff. So he was like, oh, I got in a fight with Crazy Guy. He tried to pull bats on me and whatever last night. And we were like, oh, wow. Okay, so then Crazy Guy, a few minutes later, pulls up in his car with a knife and gets out and starts running for Brian. And we're there, and our door is wide open. Like, we don't even have time to, like, shut our door, like, lock it or anything. I panicked. I was like, oh, my, you know. You don't even want to know. I was probably cussing. I don't even remember what I said. In fact, I don't even remember. The next thing I knew, I was down the hill out the back of my house in the forest with my son and my husband. And let me tell you what my husband did in the span of about 1 second. He saw the guy, he saw the knife. He grabbed me, literally grabbed me and our son, took us through the apartment, out our back sliding glass door, because it wasn't off the ground, it was an on-the-ground apartment. Out the sliding glass door, through our little backyard courtyard we had, through a broken panel in the back gate, down the hill, and hid us in the woods. Because we didn't have any weapons or anything at the time in our house. We didn't have a gun or anything. And literally, I kind of sort of remember getting through the gate. I kind of remember crawling through the broken part of the gate. Because there wasn't an outlet on the back part, only the front, where Crazy Guy was. But it was that quick. My instinct was to cry. Okay. My husband who, he's not particularly like, you know, trained in that sort of thing. He was very briefly in the military. He had a medical issue and had to leave. So he's in the military for less than a year. So he wasn't, you know, he's not especially trained in any, you know, of these sorts of situations. This was his instinct. His instinct was to, boom, wife, child, he knew, I mean, it was like his brain had already pre-planned where to go. I wouldn't even know where to go. I mean, my first thought would have been like, try to get back into the house and shut the door and call 911. I don't know, while I'm crying and screaming. And anyway, and I think in general, women have my reaction, and in general, men have my husband's reaction. And that's what makes us beautiful and wonderful. But since we've taken the female reaction, which is to kind of like cry all over ourselves and claim that we're victims. Oh my gosh, he has a knife, hashtag, he has a knife, hashtag, he's going to kill my family, hashtag. That's our reaction. Call for help. I don't know. Call the police. Men do, and they make the hard decisions, and they make them quick. And they make them to save their husband, the husband makes them to save their wife and their children. And this is what is not happening in Europe right now. This is what's not happening because we have a feminized man in general in our society now. And he's not shutting the dang door. These refugees, migrants, invaders are mostly male. There are diseases. They're trashing places. They're causing crime, riot. They're spitting. They're throwing rocks. Shut the door. European men, I'm going to address this to you. Ich kann ein bisschen auf Deutsch sprechen, okay? Shut the door. Schließen die Tür. Don't let them in. Be men. Do what you're supposed to do. Don't listen to this narrative of feminism that is killing white Western society. Don't buy into it. You have nothing to be guilty about as far as your ancestors goes. Okay, Opa was a Nazi. Who flipping cares? You're not a Nazi. And you don't have to prove that you're not a Nazi by sacrificing your wife and children and their entire culture and everything that your pre-Nazi ancestors built. They worked dang hard for that. They fought the dang crusades to keep the Muslims out for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. You know, I mean, okay, I'm getting emotional again. Calm down. You gotta be men. Stop allowing feminists to push. Because this is one thing that women are really good at. We push. And if you look at a little girl and her dad, is a really good example. You look at Rhett Butler and Bonnie in Gone with the Wind. Little girls get spoiled because we push. Wives get spoiled because we push. Women and feminism in general as a collective group get spoiled because we push. We push, we push, we push. You give us an inch and we're going to try to push you into a mile. If you give a little girl an ice cream cone, she's going to say, oh, but I also wanted a teddy bear. And then you get her a teddy bear, that little girl's going to say, but I also wanted to go to the carnival. That's how we act. We're born that way. And it has its purpose, and it's great when you guys like build us a house and then we're like, oh, but I wanted to have another baby, could you build another room? And you're like, sure, honey, and you build us another room. And we have another baby. That's awesome, because like humanity was built from that. Humanity was built for us pushing you guys, you know, a little bit more. Like, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Stop doing crap for us. Like years and years and years and years and years ago, like we were done, we were good, we were equal before all of that crap. Like Amelia Earhart didn't want to be a mom, she didn't want to be like a wife, she didn't want to have long hair, she was not a lesbian, people think she was, she totally wasn't. She wanted to fly planes, she wanted to have adventures, you know, she did, and so did the other 98 women that joined her 99 women's club of aviation. Aviation was brand new. You know, we think it was dominated by men. Most men were flyers, sure, it's a male thing. But women who wanted to be flyers were allowed to. We were allowed to before feminism. We didn't need it. We did not need, certainly second and third wave feminism. At least, bare minimum, we didn't need that. And first wave is debatable depending on, that's another subject. Okay, so we didn't need it. We had things. We had Queen Elizabeth. Okay? We had Bloody Mary. We had women doing their thing. We had Amelia Earhart. We had Madame Curie, you know. Okay. So we didn't need it. We were equal a long time ago. Start setting some parameters for women in your society. Men, start saying no, because we're just going to keep pushing, and we're pushing to the you know, it's like to the point of ridiculousness. Like we're the little girl that like has the ice cream and the lollipop and the teddy bear and it went to the carnival and got Cracker Jacks and like now wants to go to the movie. It's like, it's to the point of being ridiculous. It's like we have everything. We can take your children away. We can accuse you of rape and heck, if it needs to be true, it doesn't even matter. We'll carry a mattress around and everybody will support us. Stop. Please tell us no. Please. We need it. It's our natural instinct to push. You got to say no. And you got to close the door. Okay? We've got to close the door. We have to say that they're not coming in. And for those few that are children and for those few that are legitimate refugees, it's sad and it's horrible. And it's like that girl on the other side of the door crying because her dad won't let her in. It's sad and it's unfortunate. It's not your fault. It's not Europe's fault. It's not your personal family's fault, your German family. It's not their fault, okay? And it's sad. Life is sad. Life is hard. We can't give everything to everybody. Okay, I could go on forever. I think I'm going to end it there. I blame feminism for the reaction to the migrant crisis, which is increasing the migrant crisis. It's making it worse. Because the more they allow, the more are going to come. And that's not helping people, and it's not helping the legitimate refugees, and it's not helping those other people fleeing just their crappy countries. They need to build up their crappy countries into really great country. And I'm all for the Western world helping them doing that through aid and relief, and even through our military. You got some really bad news going on like ISIS, let's bomb those guys. Totally, take them out. I'm totally fine with that. The Western world, we can share that. We can be the world's police in that respect. I have no problem with that. So let's kill your bad guys. Let's make sure they're legitimate bad guys. Let's not just like arm the other guys and like cause all that conflict. No, we'll help you that way. We'll kill your bad guys. We'll give you stuff to get started. And then it's like free will. Okay? Build your country or don't. But you can't have our stuff. You can't have the stuff our grandparents worked for. You cannot take down our culture. We deserve a homeland. We deserve a culture. We have a right to it. And you can't take it away. Okay. I said I was going to stop and then I didn't. I blame feminism. That is why. It's all about emotions. There's no logic in politics anymore at all. We've become over-nurturers, and it's a bad thing. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a comment. Give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next time. Bye.